Before I get started, I just wanted to say that this is my favorite book series of all time. Catherine Jinks is a wonderful writer, and frankly, this isn't official or anything, but I want to share this book with more people, and I hope that me doing this might, I don't know, make you read the book too, because I really love this book and I want more people to know what it is. So without further ado, I will be reading the first chapter of Evil Genius by Catherine Jinks. Chapter 1. Cato Pickett was just 7 years old when he first met Thaddeus Roth. Dr. Roth worked in a row of houses near Sydney Harbor. The house was 3 stories high, its garden shrouded in a great many damp, dark trees. There was moss growing on its sandstone window ledges. Curtains drawn across all of its windows gave it a secretive air. Its front fence was made of iron, with spikes on top of each post. Beside the creaking gate was a brass sign bearing Dr. Roth's name and qualifications. "That's it," said Mrs. Pickett. "Number 29. "Well, we can't stop here," her husband replied. "No parking." "I told you to park back there." "It doesn't matter. We'll try down this street." "Stuart, that's a one-way street." "Damn it. I knew we'd never find a space. Not around this area." "Just shut up for a minute, will you?" Mr. and Mrs. Pickett were not Cato's real parents. They had adopted him when he was not quite 2 years old. Miss Pickett was thin and blonde. Mr. Pickett, fat and gray. They almost never agreed about anything. But that didn't matter, because they almost never met. Their busy schedules kept them away from home, and one another, a good deal of the time. At the suggestion of the police, however, they had both agreed to attend this interview. "We're going to be late," Mrs. Pickett warned her husband after they had circled the block 4 times in Mr. Pickett's big, gleaming Mercedes-Benz. "Just let us out, for God's sake." "I'll park here." "Stuart, you'll never fit in there." "Watch me." Cato said nothing. He sat on the back seat, dressed in his good brown cords and a lamb's wool sweater, staring out the window at Dr. Roth's house. He didn't like the look of it. He thought it had a murky, ominous appearance. "I don't want to go," he said flatly when Mrs. Pickett got out and opened the door beside him. "I know, honey, but we have to." "No, we don't," Cato retorted. "Yes, we do." "There were no formal charges," Cato pointed out, in his high, clear voice. "It was a suggestion." "That's right," said Mr. Pickett, yanking Cato out of the back of the car. "And when the police make a suggestion, you always follow it. Rule number 1. "Be careful, Stuart. You'll wreck his clothes." Cato was so small, even for a 7-year-old, that he didn't stand a chance against Mr. Pickett. Though he dragged his feet and hung off his adoptive father's hands like a sack of melons, he was forced across the street and through the front gate of number 29. The path beyond the gate was mushy, with wet leaves. There was a rich smell of decay. The door knocker was a ring in the mouth of a snarling lion's head, painted black, like the rest of the ironwork. Cato noted with interest the switchboard near the door. It was obviously ancient, full of porcelain fuses and dial meters. The Pickett's own house was only 3 years old, with a state-of-the-art electrical system, so Cato was fascinated by this dusty old relic. But he was not permitted to gaze for long. "Come on," Mr. Pickett barked. The door's open, and he pushed against it, causing it to swing back and reveal a long, dark hallway carpeted with dingy Persian rugs. About halfway down this hallway, a staircase the color of walnut stepped up to the next floor. There were several doors to the right of the front entrance, but only the closest stood ajar. "Hello," said Mr. Pickett, marching straight through it. He wasn't a man who normally waited for anything. "We've an appointment with Dr. Roth for 10:30. Gripping firmly around the wrist, Cato had no choice but to follow Mr. Pickett. He found himself in a reception area, 2 rooms divided by a pair of folding mahogany doors. There were 2 marble fireplaces and 2 chandeliers. Cato noticed cobwebs on the chandeliers. A woman sat behind the antique desk. "Good morning," she said calmly. "What name, please?" "Pickett," Mr. Pickett replied in a pompous tone. "Stuart, Lana, and Cato." He looked surprised when the woman rose, revealing herself to be almost as wide and tall as he was. She had a broad, square face and small blue eyes. She was wearing a suit, the color of dried blood. "I'll just go tell Dr. Roth that you arrived," she declared before lumbering out of the room. Cadel didn't watch her go. He was more interested in the computer she'd left behind. With its alluring glow and contented hum, the screensaver was one that he'd never seen before, a pattern of falling dominoes. "Don't even think about it," Stuart rasped when he realized what had attracted Cadel's attention. "Sit down. Over there." "Look, honey, there are toys for you to play with," Lana said, nudging the large basket with the toe of her expensive Italian shoe. Sulkily, Cadel eyed the basket's components. He was used to broken activity centers and torn books offered for the amusement of younger patients at his local doctor's office, and wasn't hopeful about the distractions provided here. But, to his astonishment, he quickly spied an old voltmeter, together with a book on flies, a plastic human skull, life-size of course, a Rubik's Cube, and a Frankenstein mask. Further investigation uncovered a dead spider embedded in its resin paperweight, a shark tooth, a galaxy warrior complete with thermo-puncher torpedoes, and a very curious fragment of a puzzle bearing the picture of a staring bloodshot eye over a set of claw marks. He was puzzling over this macabre image when the sound of heavy footsteps reached his ears. It seems Dr. Roth's receptionist was returning, clumping down the stairs like someone wearing ski boots. Lana, who had flung herself into the armchair, immediately jumped to her feet. Stuart glared at her. "Dr. Roth will see you now," the receptionist announced when she finally appeared. "You can go straight up." Stuart and Lana exchanged glances. "Are you sure?" Lana objected. I mean, does he want to discuss things in front of Cadel?" "Oh, yes," the receptionist declared firmly. Something about her voice made Cadel look up. He studied her with care, from the top of her permed head to the soles of her brown shoes. She smiled in response, and the pickets all recoiled. Her mouth looked as if it belonged to an older, harsher century. "Why are your teeth black?" Cadel wanted to know. "Why are your teeth white?" the receptionist responded, wending her way back to her desk. Lana snatched at Cadel's hand and hustled him out of the room. She and her husband whispered together as they climbed the stairs, which creaked and groaned beneath them. "Stuart, what's the matter with—" "I don't know." "Do you think this is a good idea?" "Of course it is." "But what about that woman? Her teeth?" Stuart shrugged. They had reached the landing, but it wasn't the right one. From above their heads, a voice said, "Up here!" A man draped over the second-floor banister. He was tall and thin and wore a tweed jacket. His thick, dark hair was going gray. "That's the bathroom," he remarked in a soothing voice in a cultured English accent. "I'm afraid my office is at the top here." "Dr. Roth?" "Yes, indeed." "We're a bit late," Lana offered a trifle breathlessly. "No parking." "You should turn that front yard of yours into a parking lot," Stuart added, climbing the last flight of stairs. Gracefully, Dr. Roth moved to push open the door of his office. "I would," he said, "if the local council would let me." "Heritage listing, I'm afraid." Stuart grunted. Lana smiled, a meaningless social smile. They both passed into Dr. Roth's office ahead of Cadel, who stopped at the threshold. He gazed up at Thaddeus. "Why does she have black teeth?" Cadel inquired. "Wilfrida? I'm not sure," Thaddeus replied. "Poor dental hygiene, I should think. The parents had a very strange idea about diets and doctors. Maybe they didn't believe in toothbrushes either." He cocked his head. "So you're Cadel?" "Yes." "Come in, Cadel." Dr. Roth's office surprised Cadel because it was full of modern furniture and computer equipment. There were a number of glossy cabinets, some full of filing drawers, with some cables running out of them. Cadel's eyes gleamed when he spotted those cables. "Sit down, please." Dr. Roth gestured to a cluster of couches placed between the desk and a pair of French doors. Lana chose the crimson couch, settling down into it very carefully, her bare knees drawn together. Stuart dropped into his seat like a stone. "We brought this referral," said his wife, passing an envelope to Dr. Ross. Thaddeus opened it, removed the folded sheet of paper, and smoothed the paper flat without taking his eyes off of Cadel, whose attention was fixed on a modem attached to an inline filter. "The police suggested we arrange some counseling for Cadel," Stuart explained. They also suggested that he shouldn't be allowed to use computers except under supervision. Responsible supervision. He's far too young to understand, added Lana, smoothing down her skirt. His emotional maturity hasn't caught up with his intellect. He has a genius IQ, said her husband gruffly. We had him tested. It's not his fault. We would have said something if we'd known what he was up to. He's not a bad kid. Thaddeus raised an eyebrow. By this time, he was glancing through the referral, nodding to himself. When he had finished, he refolded the paper and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Right, he said, then cleared his throat. Cadel, would you like to use my computer? Cadel whirled around. Stuart and Lana both gasped. But he can't. He's not allowed. Oh, I think he'll be all right, said Dr. Roth. I'll be interested to see if he does make a nuisance of himself. There's some very tough security software installed on that computer. He smiled indulgently at Cadel. Knock yourself out, kid. While Cadel scuttled over to the desk, his adoptive parents looked at each other in dismay. Dr. Roth sank into the couch opposite of them, his long, bony hands pressed together under his beaky nose. So, he began, Cadel has been hacking into high-security computer networks. Is that it? The power grid, Stuart interrupted. And the billing service. He likes the challenge, said Lana, sounding worried. I'm sure that's it. He's bored at school. He knows he shouldn't have, Stuart growled. But I don't think he's aware. That it's against the law, his wife interjected, at which point Stuart turned on her. I was going to say that he's probably not aware of the full implications. If you'd let me get a word in edgewise, he snapped. It's not against the law. Not when you're 7 years old. That's the whole point. You can't charge a kid of his age. But the police thought that the measures ought to be taken in any case, Dr. Roth remarked smoothly. I understand. And may I ask whether you've discussed these matters with the school that he attends? What's it called? Efflington's Grammar, Lana supplied. We live on the North Shore, you see. They've expelled him, Stuart said flatly. Don't want him there. Too much like hard work, designing special programs for the genius. So we've enrolled him in Jamboree Gardens. They believe in small classes and they nurture potential on individual basis. It's one of them tree-hugger schools, Stuart concluded without much enthusiasm. Again, Thaddeus nodded. In the brief silence that followed, the click-clack of the hard-work computer keys filled the room. Cadel sat perched on Dr. Roth's chair, his small feet dangling, his gaze fixed. Can you tell me anything else about your son that might be useful? Thaddeus said at last, and Lana leaned forward. We're not his birth parents, she revealed in a low voice. If that matters. He knows, of course. This wouldn't have happened if his nanny hadn't left, Stuart sighed. No supervision. Why did his nanny leave? Dr. Roth queried, whereupon Stuart rubbed the back of his neck in obvious discomfort. This time, Lana's voice was so low that it was barely a whisper. He used to charge things to our credit card. She used it so much that, of course, he picked up on it. He's a funny kid, Stuart admitted. He's not normal. Stuart! Well, he's not. You can't pretend that he is. Shh. But Cadel didn't seem to be listening. He was peering at the computer screen, his lips pierced, his brow furrowed. You know what he said to me the other day? Stuart continued. Lana and I had been arguing. We don't often argue. His wife broke in, smiling nervously at Thaddeus. You're giving Dr. Roth the wrong idea, honey. Stuart snorted. Yeah, well, whatever you say. Anyhow, he looked at me straight in the eye and said, You're like a malfunctioning modem with her. You need to locate the right initialization string. Stuart blinked. Can you believe that? His wife tittered. Oh dear, she said. That is so Cadel. He carries the strangest things around with him, Stuart went on. Not yo-yos or rubber frogs or stuff like that. He carries circuit boards and thermometers and ignition coils. God knows where he gets them. Out of my computer, Lana grimaced, her face falling suddenly. That's where he gets them. Or he dismantles the security system. We have a circuitry room, Stuart confessed. It controls the security system and the phone system and the air conditioning. We can never get him out of there. Half the time when you turn on the television, the garage door opens. Whatever kind of lock you put on the damn circuitry room, he always cracks it sooner than later. Like you said, Lana, you can't resist a challenge. All three adults turned their heads to study Cadel, who ignored them. He looked just like a little angel, with his huge blue eyes, chestnut curls, and heart-shaped face. We were wondering if he was a bit autistic, Lana sighed. But he's not. We checked it out. He's just not very interested in people. Especially other kids, said Stuart. Well, what other kids anywhere near his age are going to be interested in formation protocol settings? Quite, said Thaddeus. And what do you hope to gain from having Cadel visit me here, Mr. and Mrs. Pickett? Well, Lana cast a hopeless glance at her husband, who shrugged. We're just doing what we're told, he mumbled. So this whole business won't happen again. Perhaps you can teach Cadel some social skills? Lana proposed brightly. Help him to understand that he can't do whatever he wants just because he's smarter than everyone else? Because he thinks he's smarter than everyone else, Stuart amended, and he narrowed his eyes, his jaw muscles working. Thaddeus surveyed him thoughtfully. Yes, said Thaddeus. I see. All at once he surged to his feet, taking Mr. and Mrs. Pickett by surprise. Well, thank you very much for the input, he remarked pleasantly. You've been most helpful. I'll keep that in mind when I talk to your son. It might be interesting to have some more tests done, but I'll discuss that with you later. Could you give me, say, 20 minutes? 20 minutes alone with Cadel? It should be enough for today. You mean now? Said Stuart. If that's all right with you. Well, I guess so. If it's all right with Cadel, said Lana. Cadel, honey, do you mind if we step outside for a few minutes? Dr. Roth wants to talk with you. There was no reply. Cadel didn't appear to have registered the fact that Lana was addressing him. He won't even notice we're gone, her husband muttered. You watch. We'll be right downstairs, honey. We won't be far. You'd think he was deaf, Stuart complained. As he nudged his wife from the room, she threw Dr. Roth a toothy smile. He's not deaf, actually, she assured the psychologist. We've had tests done. The door slammed shut. Thaddeus waited until he could no longer hear the tramp of feet on stairs before scrolling over to where Cadel had sat in the typist's chair. Cadel ignored him. Suddenly, Thaddeus yanked the chair, making him spin around until he was pointing towards him. Then, he grabbed each armrest and leaned into Cadel's face. Cadel's hands jumped up in a startled reflex. I'll make a deal with you, Cadel, said Thaddeus. Can you keep a secret? Solemnly, Cadel nodded. Good. Then this is what we'll do. If you don't tell your parents about it, I'll let you use my computer whenever you come here. Does that sound good? Again, Cadel nodded. And all I ask in return is this. The corner of Thaddeus' mouth rose, revealing one yellowish, pointed canine tooth. Through the lenses of his spectacles, his eyes were as black as a snake's. His voice dropped into a throaty whisper. Next time, he murmured. Whatever you do, don't get caught. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed my narration of Chapter 1 of Evil Genius by Catherine Jinks, please follow the links in the description for you can actually support her and read the books or listen to the official audiobooks. It would really mean the world of me if more people knew this book. I just thank you, Catherine Jinks, for being an amazing author. I can't. You're amazing. Thank you. And thank you if you listened this far. Because I'm just nerding out here. Anyway, thank you. Bye!